So we're talking about less impulsivity, better concentration and focus, better adaptive social skills, better executive functioning, so that more advanced decision-making, orientation, and processing. And all of this corresponds to getting ample protein.
Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. All right, Experience Miracles Tribe, this is one you are going to want to be ready to listen all the way through. It is round 2 with MiIler. I may have mistakenly said, once we get this interview rolling, Dr. MiIler. How is she not a doctor of 5 different degrees? Because this woman is brilliant. And what I love about the way and what she teaches with Naturally Nourished Kids, which is the conversation we're having today, but it's also the title of her new book, along with their co-author, Becky. And I'm telling you, I got 4 kids. My oldest is 17, so I've been in the game for a little bit. Like, if I'm going to learn something new in terms of the nervous system, nutrition, nourishment, macronutrients, I love for it to be both modern and scientifically updated. And then I love for it to also be simple, straightforward. Can we actually literally do this with our 4 kids? And, they were blessed. I was blessed to get my hands on a copy of this book before it released. We literally interviewed Allie on release day of this. I know if you're watching on YouTube, you can see me holding it. It's the most beautiful book. I mean, it's the most well-done book I've ever seen in this nutrition space. And then it's about our kiddos, right? And so I've read a lot of books about nutrition, as it relates to adult health or sports performance or healing for adults. But let's just be honest, there isn't a lot of people who have really gotten into it for our kids and done, again, which is our kind of 2 criteria here to get on the Experience Miracles podcast. This has got to be cutting edge. This has got to really teach us the latest neurophysiological science. Like, we now know we get to live in this information age where we have more information, we have more data, we have more research to really lean on. And Allie's the boss at that. Like, the way she teaches this stuff and what she teaches in here, it's as cutting edge, it's as up to date as it gets. But right out of the gates on this interview, so I won't spoil it here in the introduction, we get into the truth that so often, for so many of you rock star parents, and I feel this as a parent, I feel this as a provider, the more we know, sometimes the more paralyzed, the more handcuffed we get. It's information overload, and it's so sciencey, it's so complex, and it's so intricate. Like, how do we actually do this for breakfast? How do we actually do this packing our kids snacks? How do we actually do this making dinner with our family? How do we do this with our toddlers? How do we do this with our teenagers? Well, guess what they did? They literally took that real life, practical, straightforward, make this simple conversation on with this book. I've never read one that does it better, that gets to the depth that we need to actually get healing and health, but then gets to the simplicity that we need to actually be able to do it in our daily lives. So y'all, we brought on Allie because we just think the world of her and her work and her podcast. And then this book, they sent us a copy ahead of time, and we just had to have her on here for round 2. We speak for an hour in this one, and it is chock full of nutrient-dense macro protein omegas. There's some choline in this interview. There's some neurological regulation in this interview. This sucker is packed full. This crock pot is just dialed in. This crock pot. I just called this interview a crock pot. Who does that? Me, so you're going to love this one. This woman is brilliant and has really, really created such impact in the world. So let me read you her official bio just to make sure I give her the respect and reverence that is so due and so earned, and then we'll kick it right into the interview. So MiIler is a registered dietitian with a contagious, that's true, passion for developing clinical protocols and programs using nutrients and food as the foundation of treatment and healing. Her food as medicine philosophy is supported by up-to-date scientific research with a cutting-edge functional approach to healing the body. And again, not a lot of people can be cutting edge and keep it really straightforward. And she's just able to do that. Allie's a renowned expert in the ketogenic diet with over a decade of clinical results using a very unique whole foods approach over that decade that supports thyroid, adrenal, hormonal balance. Another one of her books is the Anti-Anxiety Diet. And that was our first conversation. How do we really, and I got to go on their podcast and talk about how do we really tackle anxiety naturally, nutritionally, and then in my world, neurologically. Allie's message has influenced millions through media with television segments, features on Mind, Body, Green, and Oprah Magazine, Women's Health, Prevention Magazine, and then her award-winning podcast, which again, I got to go on and jam on with her, Naturally Nourished. And then within the medical community, she is revered, respected, and impactful, and for good reasons. She can teach it here verbally through the podcast. They crushed it with this book, just like the other ones, and they are here to help us change your family's life through hope, answers, practical action steps, and information. And this one is all about how to help us raise naturally nourished kids. You're going to love it. Let's go. Okay. Dr. Allie MiIler, welcome back. They heard your whole fancy bio there. Well, it was fancy, and then I just did it my way, telling them how much I love you. And we get to jam with you again. So round 2 here on the Experience Miracles podcast. And it's not even round 2 for you. I know we're on a podcast, so I guess I won't hold it up for everyone to see. But this book, Naturally Nourished Kids, is so beautiful. Like, guys, everybody that's listening to the podcast, we're going to talk about it from the beginning to the middle to the end. Go now and get it. We're actually recording on book launch day. So when you get to hear this, you will literally have access instantly to the book.
Yes.
We're going to make it so easy. It's beautiful. It's eye-catching. It's so incredible from what it looks like, Allie. But then most importantly, obviously, inside of it, it's so well done. It's so practical. It's so helpful. I mean, I got 4 kiddos. I kind of went, I love how you did it through the age range. We'll talk about that. And I got into the, middle school and teenagers. And so we'll get into that. What was the spark? You guys have already been serving your community and all of us families so well. You have incredible content on your website, your Instagram, you have other books. Like, what was the spark to write this kid-focused book, which was so needed? Where'd that come from?
Well, I have to share first that I am not a doctor, but thank you for the compliment. And it's not the first time it's happened because I am a high-powered hose of information.
You are. Well, in my book, you are, because every time I talk, every time I talk to you, we talked about that ahead of time. You just know your stuff so well. So game on for that. Yeah.
Thank you. So, this book is co-authored by Becky Yu and myself. And I have been working with Becky since 2014. She initially came on as my food blogger and photographer. And so as I was in clinic, I actually wanted to provide my patients a weekly food as medicine recipe. And so we would print these recipes out featuring, a particular functional medicine topic, and then maybe, inulin as a prebiotic, and here's a sunchoke slaw for you type of thing. And so, we've been working together for quite some time. Some of these recipes probably originate all the way back 10 years plus from that era. And then it's just evolved over time. Becky photographed my cookbooks, so Naturally Nourished, and then the Anti-Anxiety Diet cookbook. And when that third book came out, I remember distinctly she was newly pregnant with now her oldest. He just turned 5. And I said to her, okay, well, the next book we're writing together. And because she is more type A than me. And I said, you've been already, I think she was 3-4 months pregnant at the time. And I said, you've been digging into all of this, prenatal health and growing the super baby. My Stella was 3.5 at the time. And I said, This next book we're going to write together. It's going to be a kid's cookbook, and we're going to take it all the way from baby-led weaning through keeping healthy hip. And it's going to be a collab. And now we hit a couple roadblocks getting it out to the masses. That was a conversation in 2020. And, we had an almost deal with a publisher in 23. We've been scraping and pushing for it. Now Becky has a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 10-week-old. I have a 9-year-old, and we just dropped it today. I think it has been God-led divine timing with everything going on with Maha, a lot of broad conversation about ultra processed foods, but also I think a time of anxiety and fear with not enough solution. We're hearing a lot of the buzz of don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And my perspective is always so focused on empowerment and a positive perspective, being the light, not shaming or judging. And so I think Naturally Nourished Kids comes at a timely era where parents are really looking for confidence and solution versus confusion and fear.
Thank you so much for leading us off right with that. That is why you guys are our go-to expert on this, because I can't remember if it had to be 12, 18 months ago, somewhere in there. I was talking to another one it was just a lunch chat. It was literally just a lunchtime conversation with another one of our PX docs who's a hard charging, raging bull, loves to serve his community, loves to make content like I do. He serves patients, but he really does enjoy making content too. And he brought it up to me, and he has a great name. His name is also Anthony. And so we were just chatting, and he said, I've had enough. He's a New Jersey guy, and he's, very aggressive in a good way. And he's like, I've had enough. I've had enough with all of this gaslighting, overwhelming. The moms in our practice, they literally don't think they can breathe the air, drink the water, eat the food. It's just this long list of things you can't do. And nobody is helping them with a solution that is simple, straightforward. They're being good, I think with good intentions, but mistakenly led down this road of like, the only way to succeed with the health for our kids, especially diet, food, nutrition, is, this super complex, overwhelming, really kind of fear-based, sort of approach to feeding our kids. We tend to start with the list of what we cannot do or cannot have. Well, we know, especially you and I, we love the nervous system. We know how the nervous system works. The more you talk about what you can't have, the more you end up stuck with what you're not supposed to have. So I love that a million times over, that is your impetus. That is your catalyst. Like, hey, you and Becky just said, let's serve this world with a solution. And that's the first thing I caught going through the book is like, wow, this is so doable. Yeah. This is so straightforward. I'm a dad of almost four teens, going from 17 down to 11. And it's like, there couldn't be a more fast paced, in a good way, life with plenty going on. And yet we hang on to this. We really want our kids, especially when they face the life that, is coming at them now, like, let's nourish. Let's stay rooted in the foundation of good health. Let's do it together. I love how you talk about cooking together in here. So anyway, thank you. Son, I got to say this out loud. I just want to say these words. Sun-choked slaw. That was what came to mind for you when you talked about your memories? Allie, only you would default to sun-choked slaw. I'm ready to try it.
Maybe not the most popular one, especially if your microbiome isn't right, because that prebiotic fiber will...
Seems like that guy will come in hot. Yeah, that guy comes in strong, kind of like me on a podcast intro. Maybe that's my new naturally nourished nickname, sun-choked slaw. So, okay. Let's go into it. So I love that story. That's where we got started with it. Let's stick with the list. Let's start with, because we want it to be simple and straightforward. So if we start with the 3 core key nutrients that are absolutely game-changing, essential to our kids at every age, right? At every stage. What are those 3 key nutrients that you guys just know?
Can I set the tone before I answer nutrients? Just because I think, and we even open the book, I think it's on the first page, of before we decide even grams of protein or milligrams of choline, which I'm going to get nerdy and talk micronutrients, of course, we have to first ask ourselves, is this food? Because I think that that's really important. The way that I approach food as medicine, again, is this double-edged sword. And so just like we said, we don't want to light fires and demonize a particular ingredient. The reason for that is that the food industry is tricky and they will use their marketing to manipulate you, and they will rename ingredients. They will claim that they're free of things that they know that we're aware of trying to avoid. And so it's so much better than to worry about these particular additives, the particular names of the food dyes that they've all rebranded now, right? To focus on, first off, is this real whole food? So is this food from God, our creator? Is it growing? Did it have a mother? Can it wilt and decay? Was it once viable and live? Was it full of vibrant life force, right? That matters. And then, or is this a ultra processed product? And everything is a continuum. And so there's going to be dynamics within there. And everyone listening, I never want you to get caught up in perfection paralysis. Wherever you are at your continuum, we keep moving the dial closer to that God food, closer to that deep connected nourishment, closer to knowing our sources of our ranchers or growers, because that's where the nutrient density lies. And that's where nutrients, honestly, that we haven't even learned to identify yet exist. So just to kind of, set that as a tone, I think that's important, because when we worry about just what not, that's going to be hitting us in the butt. It's going to work against us.
Man, you were made to share this work. This is incredible. What a blessing to have you on here again. I love that you said everything there. The spectrum. I always work so hard with my patients and our audience to be like, I promise you this, because we're our own harshest critic. Like, I promise you this. The fact that we're in this conversation, you're asking these questions, and I get to give you this guidance means you're moving forward. You're moving forward on that continuum and on that spectrum. And that's where health goes. Health is all about moving forward and working on it and improving it, each day, each season, and all that sort of stuff. And that's the absolute benefit to learning more. That's the absolute benefit to jumping on that podcast, getting into that book. It's not about, I didn't know this before. It's the excitement of, oh my goodness, I know this now. Let's go, and moving forward. So cool. Thank you.
And I mean, this book is a call to action to return nourishment to the household in general. And I think that that's something important as well. Before we're thinking of the what, it's like, is your kitchen a space that is desirable for your household? Do you walk by and you grunt when you look at the dirty dishes in the sink? Or do you have fresh flowers and you're listening to records, and the table is still the hearth of the household, where you're praying, where you're downloading your days, where you're having those hard conversations, where you're building each other up and troubleshooting? Because I really think if we look at how we got into 70% of the diet being ultra processed, it's because we've given our sovereignty away from the growers and ranchers to the chemical manufacturers. And we were sold that convenience because it was low value to cook. And so we could watch the programs on the TV, move away from that center stone of the household, the hearth. And I think that that's really where we are dealing with a lot of cultural illness. And so I think that part of this is, again, wherever you are, a part of this means that you have to start to redefine your relationship with food and see this as an opportunity to reclaim nourishment in the household. And that starts with really claiming that space in the household as well.
Don't you think perhaps, we think in terms of subluxation at chiropractic, meaning, okay, what is the primary subluxation? What is taking away the optimal outcome the most, right? What's the single biggest, detractor? Convenience wipes out that connection. You seek out convenience, you get it, but you lose something, right? Everything has a return to it, and some good and some bad. And you do. I noticed that with our family. We got into it just enough for a season where it was like, the more convenient we can make this, the better. And all of a sudden we started to feel less connected to our children, to each other, to our creator, to our home, and what's a better spot in the house than the kitchen, honestly, right? The smells, the laughs, the herbs we're going to talk about later on, making real food tasty, all the things that go on. I can just picture that, right? They're all being added in as we go along. So awesome. Such foundational. Those are such great things to bring to the front end of this conversation. Convenience sometimes, but connection is the best thing. Connection.
Amen.
Connection.
So 3 nutrients. So 3 key nutrients that all kids need. So I'm going to start with a macro versus a micro, and that is protein, my friends. Protein is just an absolute necessary insurance policy for all ages. And there are so many reasons: growth and development for sure, metabolic health for sure, because protein helps in the way that we regulate our glycemic index, as well as our uptake of skeletal muscle intake of glucose. So not relying on as much insulin. Protein plays a huge role with the prefrontal cortex. So we have this icon in the book where I talk about actually a study where they fed children 20 grams of protein, what they called a high protein diet.
Yeah.
We can talk about that too.
I did have to read that twice. I was like, I had to. Yeah.
Yes, it is though. I mean, honestly, most kids are eating Trix, drinking orange juice and getting maybe 2 to 3 grams, so yeah. And so, protein we see plays a role in that prefrontal cortex, which plays a role with executive functioning. So we're talking about less impulsivity, better concentration and focus, better adaptive social skills, better executive functioning. So that more advanced decision-making, orientation and processing. And all of this corresponds to getting ample protein. Yeah. We also know that protein, of course, is comprised of amino acids. So if we're talking about mental health, we need those neurotransmitters and we need an abundance of amino acids to provide for that. We need protein to make antibodies anytime we are faced with an antigen. So whether that is pollen or a food antigen or a viral pathogen, we need that protein to support that immunological surveying and response. And so protein is absolutely an essential foundation for optimal eating for your child. You will notice day and night change. And I'm sure if you even play with trying on our recommendations of 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, you'll feel more fortitude. I always say, if I don't meet my protein goals, I'm more unhinged. I'm erratic. I don't feel grounded. I don't feel centered. And I'm flighty. Even if my blood sugar is pretty regulated, I just feel kind of brain flighty.
You just don't have that solid foundation. I watch it with every one of my kiddos. This is where it's cool. God is really moving a lot of things in the right direction together. I love so much, being the nervous system nerd. And that's why one of the many reasons we fell in love with you. Turns out you are too, right? Vagus nerve, adrenals, dysautonomia, everything. But the nervous system is trending. And thankfully, so is protein. What's cool is I'm watching I have my 2 high schoolers. One is an obsessed athlete. Oliver's a runner. So on one end, it's probably easier for him to look at I got to get my protein. My daughter is not an athletics. She's very much into keeping her mood regulated, her cognition and her brain. And so she's just as committed to hitting her protein, the gain. Oliver would put the Z on it, gains, but I don't care how they get to it. I just care that they get to it. And we tell our patients all the time with this one, just try it. Literally for a couple of days, hit this protein hard, report back, because we know what the reports are coming back, right? They're like, oh my goodness, this moves the needle very, very clearly. Cool.
No doubt. So that's essential. And we can uncover, throughout our conversation, ways to get it in at different meals, et cetera.
Yeah, I got a question about there. We'll come back to, is there literally at all a brand? Yeah. Okay. Back to convenience. Is there actually a protein shake that you would? So we'll circle back to that at the end. Okay.
I'll make sure it is. So the second one I'd go for actually is kind of a fringe nutrient. We see, of course, focus on vitamin D, on iron. I would say those are absolutely important. Iron, especially when we're looking at early child development. And that's why the argument for those iron fortified cereals, which are truly synthetically enriched, high glycemic, very sweet or bland, not serving that savory palate development. And so pushing with iron, I think, is important because it dual hits protein, especially when we're looking at those heme forms of iron. And so this is like red meat, of course. Wild caught salmon would be a great heme-rich form of iron. This helps with blood oxygenation. We also know the importance of iron on mental health, growth and development. There's immune mechanisms. And definitely we see brain fog, concentration issues when we're deeming towards anemia. So iron really important. And at those early ages, we see the importance of getting ample whole food sources. And then I would add choline as my third nutrient of focus, actually, which we're seeing a lot more studies now on prenatal health and the importance equally almost as folate in neural tube development. But acetylcholine, which choline contributes to the production of, is like a transductor for our nervous system. So especially with the rise of autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD, and neurological conditions, getting your child, I think it's ages 5 through 8, need 1.5 eggs worth of choline as far as the milligrams that we're getting, about 250 milligrams, which is 1.5 egg yolks, give or take. And so as they age, they might need those couple 2 to 3 eggs. But egg yolks are going to be a really fantastic source of choline. So is liver. And we have some really great ways to get it in. We have pate in here for you.
Yeah.
We have our superfood chicken nuggets, which use an ancestral blend of.
I saw those.
Yes.
Those caught my eye for sure. Yeah.
Yes. And they have frozen cauliflower in there and a fantastic dipping sauce, a turmeric honey mustard dipping sauce. And choline is also even rich in bacon. So you can always start with bacon. Honestly, Stella, in my diaper bag from age, 18 months, I swear, until 3, I always had Peterson's used to have individual packed bacon. And that was anytime there was hangry or an issue. It's like, here, baby, get this choline for your nervous system, fat and protein. We're going to be good.
Yeah. Well, I'm laughing about it because, I get to do this. You're at home, right? Doing the recording here? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I know you guys have the farm life too. It didn't really happen, but I really wanted it. When you said egg yolks, I wanted our I can see a bunch of chickens running around out here. I wanted the ladies to look up and be like, yeah, I just got a shout out on the podcast, didn't we? You did. I love those ladies. And the funny story, Doctor, the whole podcast team knows this. I despise birds. I'm deathly afraid of birds. I think I've actually mentioned that on the podcast many times. I don't like Halloween. I don't like birds. But there's one now exception. These chickens of mine these ladies mean the world to me because they provide us so much health and nutrition. And if you've ever when you want to say farm fresh egg, holy moly, get yourself some chickens. When you literally walk out there in the morning, which I do most days, we're a big bacon and eggs, and sourdough and avocados on repeat. That's like breakfast probably 80% of the time here on the Ebel life. Walk out there, do chores, grab the eggs, literally make them. And, it's unreal. You can just feel the health. You honestly can. That comes from it. And I can notice it with my kids too, that they've been blessed to kind of have that strength. So protein, iron, choline. Mm-hmm. Oh, awesome. Being the neurosensory perfect storm guy, I'd go with you. If somebody made me fill out a perfect storm, multiple choice, and we're like, hey, you're going to advocate for folate or choline, I'd pick choline. I only bring that up to say, I think the world is kind of getting in the know about folate and methylated B vitamins and whatnot on, those early stages of life. But I still feel like choline is lagging behind. And from a neurological standpoint, that is your strong scaffolding. You have to have it consistently. You have to have enough of it. You got to have the great God-led sources of it to deliver it. And when you have it, you know it. Your nervous system is much more secure and efficient. So speaking of the nervous system, one of the things that is so intricately woven into the nervous system is the neuromotor, neurosensory, neurostructural impact on chewing. And this whole epidemic that I think probably our audiences know more about, but they really need to know more about, is that this weird shift, not weird, we all know why they did it, but this shift to our little kids and kids period, eating more pureed and soft foods early on, it's really messed with the development of jaw structure and jaw, nervous system, jaw. Those are homies. Those are very intricately woven together. So we'll go into the sensory components next, but just as a general foundational conversation, why is it so important to have these God-led macronutrient whole foods that our kids are chewing for the development of their jaw and nervous system?
So chewing is important for goodness. I think maybe 5 reasons. Let's see if I can come up with all. So one is that when we are chewing, we are telling our nervous system that we are parasympathetic. So we're immediately giving that bilateral highway of our central nervous system the feedback through our enteric nervous system that's anticipating intake. The chewing process starts that salivary process, which we know is also parasympathetic. That's why we think rest digest mode. You're never going to be running from a cheetah and chewing a steak at the same time, right? So the idea that chewing itself and actually activating the mandible tells the nervous system that it is time to rest and digest, tells kids that are sitting in an EMF classroom with LED lights and a lot of excessive Wi-Fi, excitatory stress, even if they're not emotionally stressed, they're being physiologically stressed during the school day. They need to stop, drop, and chew because that's going to give them an ability to decompress, to get into that safe regulatory mode.
And you can learn, innately, you can learn how valuable it is, because when a child is stuck in sympathetic dominance, a sensory overdrive, what do?
Yeah.
Chew on their shirt, chew on their pens, chew on
Yes.
everything. It's innately, it's a feedback mechanism for our most stressed kids. So it tells you, okay, I'm triggering the vagus nerve and triggering parasympathetic, because the jaw is also loaded with proprioceptors, because it's right next to the neck, which is the number one density. So you're triggering proprioception. The P's go together. So it's right there with the parasympathetic, another component of that. Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
And, we're seeing only more and more decline of proprioception.
For sure.
The short, we're not seeing the horizon.
Yep.
We're not aware of our bodies in space because we're not playing outside enough and hanging upside down and all of those things. So chewing is just one way you can ensure that. We know also during the chewing, there was a study that looked at soft diet versus a dense diet. And they saw with the soft diet that there was hippocampal atrophy. So actually there was atrophy or shrinkage in part of the brain. Sure. We also see that there's better oxygenation to the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus during times of chew. So we're getting better blood oxygenation, means better brain function in that space. Then we also know that chewing supports satiety. It increases our CCK. So we're seeing now this gut-brain connection of this is eating time, this is regulatory time. My body feels another safety signal from that CCK, which can respond both metabolically favorably to prevent hunger and crashing and cravings, but also again on that parasympathetic mode. And then of course, dental wise, the work of Weston A. Price started to look at these primal palates and how we're getting occlusions and getting those wisdom teeth removed, sleep apnea, of course, really narrow palates, which are impacting even our ability to speak and facial tone and jaw structure. And so, it's so multifold, and just knowing the impact of sleep apnea on depression, anxiety, mental health, and metabolic health to prevent that at an early age, and preventing the expensive orthodontics.
Yes.
My daughter, I think, is one of the only of her friends at age 9 that hasn't used a palate expander. Yeah. She likely won't need any braces, it's looking like. And I believe a lot of that's attributed to her baby-led weaning, savory, more paleo traditional diet.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can, unfortunately, I have to say, where our family would look the other, and even me being pediatric neurocranial structural, what I mistakenly did early on is I looked at these two fields separate. Truth be told, this is probably the best way I can say this, thinking out loud here, is I saw the nervous system and nervous system function and structure over here. And then I saw nutrition and nutrients over here, right? And back then, I don't think even us as providers necessarily, shared knowledge as much and brought these two worlds together, neuro and nutrition and structure. And now it stinks, because we were awesome, I would say, with like the sources of our kids' foods, the macronutrients that were in there, the fact that they were sourced from the right places. They were obviously clean and organic and chemical free, but we definitely went heavier down the softer foods, the smoothies and the purees. Yep. And I can't say that we pushed our kids when they were little to be chewing steak and getting into the sourdough. And now we have had some of that where it's like, oh my goodness, how is my stinking kids, and you're just like, it's the hardest forever. Every practitioner, a lot of times your kids are sometimes the ones you stump over the most. But it's that simple. When we looked back at it, we were like, oh, well, that fruit and those things, those were great, but we made it too easy on the jaw to get the food in, and that created what it created, And
even us adults, we fall victim to it, because again, even the crunchy processed foods are different than a dense food. So like you said, steak, absolutely. We're looking for more of the slow cooked, tougher cuts of meat, which also provides better amino acid distribution and at least balances out those grinds, because how many Americans just eat their meat in form of pre-ground, which is pre-chewed. The machine chewed it, and then you're, forming and cooking it. But again, you're not having to really work it and break it down. So that's something that we're really conscious of. And we hit at least 2 to 3 meals a day. Sometimes breakfast tends to be hard to get that raw density in. But we for sure make sure that lunch, it might even be carrot sticks. So like getting raw carrots versus just bell pepper. So there's more density to that. And honestly, as we're working to come up with these foods, even mastic gum is something that I'm recommending now to parents, because mastic gum is so lovely for H. pylori pylori, which we're seeing an influx of, and ulceration, can help with gut tissue lining support. But also that mechanism, again, for a child that's more anxious, that is stressed, it is a regulator. And I find that to be of benefit.
Cool. Love it. Two things. One is a funny joke / reality. My dad must have taught this to me. When my dad grilled, he literally over grilled everything. I didn't even know that medium existed, let alone like medium rare or rare, right? Like I just thought everything was just that dark color and you had to chew. My jaw structure is probably pretty dialed in, because of how overcooked all of our burgers and everything were. Well, then there's me when I grill, but I try to do too much. This won't shock you at all, Allie. I try when I do go to grill and I have this beautiful outdoor kitchen now, I'm like, I'm going to do 5 things all by myself. So I always just overcook our steaks and everything. And my kids, now I can use that against them / for them. I can say, look, children, I love you so much. I'm making you chew harder with
there
that.
You go.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I'm going to use that one. Second, though, now I forgot my real point. The second component of that really comes forward is I think it's just a great reminder that if we have our kiddos really struggling to chew and we learn this incredible nutrient density, all these components that come with the sources of the foods, the whole foods, the fact that we're supposed to. And if you run up against a wall and your kiddo is sensory, they have some challenges, and you're listening to us right now and you're thinking, how am I going to get this to happen? Because I really want to. There is nothing. Here's my time to insert it. The greatest cheat code you can do right here is get your kiddos adjusted. If there is a subluxation anywhere in the cranial to cervical, we're talking upper cervical to mid cervical and even lower cervical because the jaw has to hand it off to the esophagus and into the upper GI. If there is subluxation sets up shop on the structure, the neuromuscular tissues, but subluxation also interferes with the sensory stimulation into the brain saying, hey, I need you to do your job. I need you to activate these. And so we do see that obviously, right, Allie, our sensory and our picky eaters.
Yes.
And so I just literally had 3 of them yesterday. I was reviewing, I had 5 progress reports, which means kids are, maybe anywhere between 3 days to a week. Each care plan is different. I had 3 different progress reports where they're at their very first progress check, meaning some kids had 6 adjustments and some had 12. All 3 of those literally said they're finally chewing food, trying dense foods, and knowing what I know about nutrition, right? The fact that wasn't on the plate, literally, for that child before, that was very much going against their healing, right?
Yes.
And so the one thing, chiropractic being this cheat code to open up the child from a neuromuscular function to a neurosensory to a neurodigestive. See, this is how God made us. Not a single one of those 3 kids did we say, hey, tonight, try some macro-dense foods. They innately led their parents to that because inside out, they could. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like they said, hey, after that C2 adjustment, this is like a 2-year-old, after that C2 adjustment, Mom, I'm pretty sure I can handle some liver.
Right.
They just went for it. I love that about kids. They heal fast and they show the results of that fast. So any other tips for, you work with a lot of tough cases, clinically, that's always been your calling. What other tips do you have, sensory, picky eaters, that component?
So, I think the first thing to acknowledge in the world of picky eating is that we have to be consistent and we have to create clear expectations. That's the base. Because I think what happens is, and honestly, when we go through the end of the second chapter and I talk through the life cycle of a child, right away at that toddler is where we can start to see food jags, or we can start to see some serious opposition or power play. And I think a lot of parents are anxious about food, unfortunately, which is another, reason to give them confidence with this resource. But they tend to bend, they're tired, they're exhausted. And this isn't me casting blame. I'm just witnessing what I've seen. And so we just say, oh, well, fed is better than not at all. Yes, I will make another grilled cheese. Or let's just give, Johnny the mac and cheese because we can't deal with another display at dinner. Our nervous systems can't handle it. It's just easier to eat in peace kind of thing. And I think, unfortunately, when we allow our children to drive with stubborn food jags. And we'll talk about the difference of honoring your child's choice and intuitive eating. I think that is very important, but I'm talking about a child asserting themselves with asserting themselves with requesting only one particular food. that can't be an option, because if we give into that, we are disempowering them and we are interfering with their healing process. The reality is that we are all wired to survive. And when we have an extremely picky eater, we need to work with what's presented and re-offer it and re-offer it and re-offer it. It's like, oh, well, we didn't eat all of our dinner. Well, guess what's for breakfast? Dinner. Dinner's for breakfast. Guess what's for lunch?
It works.
Dinner again.
It works. It works. Our
It's tough
pickiest eater,
love.
it's an N of one in this study, but our pickiest eater, and there's reasons, her birth was a certain way and her nervous system is a little more neurosensory. And when her nervous system gets a little more stressed, it alters her digestion. Like I can put her clinical picture together. And yet, therefore, because I could put her clinical picture together, you could argue that kiddo of ours needs this nutrition the most, right? And that is the catch-22. That is exactly what we're all facing. And kind of the more you know, the more you're like, oh boy, we got to do this. We just held the line in a very loving and empowering way. That kid now, and she's actually passed a lot of her, food sensitivities and things, not grown out of it, healed out of it, adjustments and nutrition. And she now eats leftovers for breakfast every single day by choice, because it was not her choice for a long time. It was the outcome. And now it's so funny. She's like, you got any steak? And I'm like, I sure do, baby girl. I sure do. Oh,
I love that. And, so I think consistency and clear expectations. And with the clear expectations, though, because this is the part that's softer about me, with the part on the clear expectations, all children, regardless of the age, all people, let's say, shoot, I'm 40 and I still want to be heard and understood. We all want to be heard. That means listened to and understood. And if we take the time to connect with our child, to let them be heard and understood, they will be more willing to accept, because there is a synergistic partnership in that experience. It is absolutely important. And I give you the language in the book through guided conversations to empower your child with the why. They are stinking smart. If it is your teenager and they are dealing with acne, the why is when you eat these foods, your microbiome changes and you will see less outbreaks. You have to connect with their hook. But also empower with facts and information and explain to them in a loving way, this is why mom wants you to get enough protein. Boom, 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 boom. And then once they know the why, you need to figure out how to partner with them on the what. So if they reject a food, it's not yuck. It's not, I didn't like it. We have a taste adventure table in the book, and this is appropriate for all ages. I'm talking from 2 through teens, of talking about the appearance, the texture, the taste. So what was it that was unappealing? And let's discuss why that occurred. Oh, you know what? Mom did get distracted and I overcooked the broccoli. So I can hear why that wasn't as good. Or it was mushy and you liked the crispy cauliflower, but you didn't like the blanched version of that. Well, if we tried to do this in that same preparation, would you be willing? It's a partnership. And then guess what? On that Wednesday, when they know that they're being challenged with that agreement, they're going to show up differently, because you just did something devoted to them and they feel that, they see that, and that connectivity allows for the acceptance.
I feel like I had a lot, not feel like, I know I did. I had a lot of favorite parts. I was going through the book and I was like, oh, this is my new favorite part. And then I get another page or two down. I was like, this is my new favorite part. And I was going through it with our doc team yesterday at our meeting. No, I was interviewing you today. And I pulled this section out, the guided partnership conversations. And I said to the doc team, I was like, Allie's like the nutritional PX doc. She literally thinks like us.
I love that.
She thinks like us. She communicates like us. Like even on your podcast, you get very practical, but very neuroscience too, right?
Yes.
You're able to do both. And then this is the essence of PX. We actually have in our certification program for our doctors, and it's this whole clinical thing, right? So you would think that all the hours are all clinical. Here's how you do it. I fought tooth and nail with the certifying school to include an entire module on communication. And the whole goal of our communication is to listen first and personalize our listening. And because the only way you can ever get to a partnership and get a child to find the answers to the why, you got to ask the questions that reveal them, and you got to take the time to listen. And that is really hard for us parents who are, one, caught up in the busyness, like you said earlier. And then 2, we rightfully, but in this specific space, we can make it a little more effective. I'm not going to call it better. I'm going to say we can make it more effective for us and them. Sometimes we have that old school, and it is true. Hey, we're the parent, you're the child, you listen, here's why, go. But that's a dictatorship. And this is not like, I love that. You said you started with the tough and then you came with the soft. And I'm tough and I'm soft at the same time with my kiddos. And the truth is, I find like each of our kiddos, when we truly sit down knee to knee, ask questions, figure out their why. I love the examples you gave right there, because each kid's going to give you a different answer. Each kid's got a different pattern, and that you're going to hear that, and you're going to be like, well, what if I have 4? Well,
yes.
There you go. You got your answers, and then you adapt and take action accordingly. Man, that works though. That so works to form this partnership. And when you do it I know I'm belaboring this point, but I think it's so powerful. When you do it for them, you model it for them. And now I watch my kids do that with each other and do that with their friends, and that's going to be such a valuable skill set for them to go into their communication here, there, and everywhere, and start with asking why, start with active, intentional listening, and then looking to guide and partner together versus like, let me bully my way into the outcome I want.
Yes. And I think along that vein, the modeling doesn't just stop at you eating your vegetables on your plate or you crushing your steak. The modeling is also in the joy that we see in the kitchen, right? I mean, so important to model that this is the hearth of the home. This is where we want to spend our time and energy. I think that that's really important. And the modeling also of inspiring with empowerment versus, again, fear, shame. Yeah. Stella is now 9. And so she is working on discernment every day. And over the summer, she had a birthday party. She got the bag and she was at a smaller school. Now she's in a big school. And that year she pulled out her gift bag and it was a Ghirardelli chocolate. And that mom knows me. And I think that mom, I believe that mom thought that she was buying the best chocolate that she could buy, the cleanest, whatnot. And Stella, bless her heart, said, she pulled it out and she goes, oh, look, Mom, this one only has 3 ingredients I can't have. And I'm like, oh, and the mom's there and I'm there and I make this face. Yeah. And so when we got in the car, we had a moment where I was like, okay. So, and Stella, mind you, bless her heart, she's like, she was 8 at the time. And she goes, but really only 3 ingredients I can't have is good, Mom. A lot of the things have like 14 ingredients I can't have. And I'm like, I hear you and I get what you're saying. But to that mama, that might have felt a little bit judgy. And the reason is that you're expressing at her party when she tried to host a lovely, and so what we're really working on is pivoting. The mantle of my household in the Miller household has Romans 12:2 on it. And this is a mission of the Miller family is do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you can do what is good and true of God's will. And when we look at food, it's so important to approach it that way as well, I believe very strongly, because it is emotional and because we want to lead with light and not with shame. And so Stella had a win for me her second week of school. Someone asked her, hey, why don't you eat in the cafeteria? Because there's 197 fourth graders. And she is one of, she says, less than 10 that bring their own lunch. Yeah. And, so I just want to see how she's going to deal with this. And she said, and Mom, I thought about it. And instead of telling her why I don't eat the cafeteria food, I told her why my mom packs my lunch. And I said, yes.
The positive outcome. Heck yeah.
That is the discernment, baby. Because that was such a win to me emotionally, spiritually, because she said, so I just told her, my mom is really about health and she loves cooking everything from scratch. So anytime there's a food I want to try, my mom just likes to make it from scratch. Yeah. And I was like, and then guess what? The girls dropped it and they went on and they played recess and it was fine. But had Stella said, because the cafeteria isn't real food and
because absolutely. It's a PX principle of the away versus towards strategy. I see a lot. I mean, the vast majority of my profession and yours too, and everyone that looks like it, we think we're helping people by just raging against the machine and telling them. We kind of started our conversation with this, right? How overwhelmed people feel because it's like this long list. We think we're moving towards health by having this long list of everything we must be deathly afraid of and away from, and it's negative and it's awful. Well, that's a physics conversation plus psychology conversation. And it's, you put the two together. If you are moving towards the light, if you are moving towards health, guess what? You are moving away from toxins. You are moving away from, it's the same thing. You get the outcome you want. You get away from the negative by being so forward focused towards the positive. I've always tried to lead with light. From our content to how healing happens to our nutrition. Like, let's not focus entirely on, let's add, subtraction via addition. And it works. So God, and I think that's a perfect segue to my next main question, which is, and it's in the book too. It's just this is amazing. Literally right now, your book is out. We got to interview our other homies. They're just, it's hard to say who we just love you all, the Joshes and the Jordans, Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin, the Biblio Diet. What a time for you guys. I don't even know how to say this. I'm just so thankful to God for you guys and the work you do and the books you produce and how much you're leading our families in this way. So God-led food. Versus man. I grew up on a farm as a youth, literally during the shift. My dad wasn't growing organic food and that he didn't know the conversations we know, Allie. His goal and his outcome wasn't that. His goal was to support his family. And what happened is the man-made chemical GMO industry took over financially farms so strongly, literally during my junior high and high school years, and I'm my dad's right-hand man. I watched a shift from our food being alive, our plants being alive, the crops being alive, the animals that we fed it to feeling alive. I literally, without knowing what I was seeing, right, in real time, I watched the food go from God-made to man-made. And then when we fed it to the cattle, I watched them go from, it was a cattle farm, but cattle that had some life to them to, why are they so sick? Why are we pumping them full of antibiotics? Why are we calling the vet all the time? It literally happened during my youth as a farmhand, if you will, because we shifted from the way the world can grow it and make it, because God designed it, Genesis, to the way ConAgra and Cargill and Monsanto wanted us to do it. So God-led food, lead us there. Why is that so wholesome and so naturally?
Yes. And honestly, most foods can be unpacked in that way. And again, kind of going back to that continuum, the closer and more intimate of a relationship we can get to the source, the best. And so, there's within that idea, if we're talking about, let's say, bread. So there is store-bought bread. And not only is it grown with a hybridized short dwarf wheat, which is more inflammatory, more obesogenic. Now we know that grains are sprayed also post-harvest, often with a desiccant agent like glyphosate. So it's getting glyphosate as an herbicide while it's growing. It's being harvested. It's being reapplied, which is why we're seeing kids' cereals and such just super high in these toxic agrochemicals. So all of that starts to disrupt a God food because, again, we're starting to add chemical amendment versus working with biologically alive soil, working with heirloom grains that are harvested and nothing is done. They're just dried, right? And so there's already some starts. It might just look like flour in a bag, but also that whole stone ground, which would be more of a whole God food, requires the maintenance of that germ intact. So you're not losing the vital nutrients of the grains. You're getting more nutrient density. You're getting antioxidants. You're getting vitamin E. Over here, we have stripped all of that. We've synthetically enriched with synthetic folate. So terrible for the MTHFR population. And then there's, of course, the chemical residue while lacking some of those nutrients. And then it goes further than turning that into bread. That's just the one ingredient, flour, which for some people would seem same, right? If we take then that, industrialized flour, it's bleached. Then it is in that bread process, we're adding dough conditioning agents, we're adding preservatives, which prevent mold and fungus because God food will wilt and decay because it has a timeline of vitality where we don't see that in these chemically adulterated processed products. If we move over here to the sourdough, we are using live active cultures to aid in the rising of that bread. We are fermenting. And through that process of fermenting, the word probiotic literally means for life. So we're provoking a second life force into that food, making it more God food than, what we're continuing to move away. And so, we can look at that with almost anything. And I think one simple approach is thinking of single real ingredients, but then even taking it a step further, potentially, if you're on that part of the continuum and moving closer of your sourcing, right? Like, did that apple come from Argentina? What's the life force of that? Was it, picked before harvest and then it was synthetically ripened with gases? Or was it picked at peak harvest down the road, connected to your terroir, the soil that is in your body? And so, I think that the closer that we can get connected to buying with local is also ideal for food security and gives sovereignty back to the individuals versus the machine.
You don't even know how important that is until you switch it up, and that's what's so cool. I've literally been on this continuum of, getting our family healthier. Like we talked about earlier, we're still learning like this. What a cheat code to have a podcast, right? You get to bring on the experts. This is what a selfish endeavor. I get to take notes and improve our family's health. I'm like direct access to the world's experts. And so you move forward, and I can tell you that has been one of the biggest shifts we've made in the last couple of years is like, okay, well, we just local, straight up, just like source this local. And I'll share that, it wasn't that long. It was like 2 weeks now. Jet lag is real, whether you're a human or an apple. Okay. And I got back, I went over and I taught, our whole seminar in Australia, and I had a flight canceled on the way out. I left the farm Monday at noon and I arrived in Adelaide, Australia Thursday at noon. It was awful. And then coming back was even worse. And so I'm telling you, my vitality did not remain at 100% with that international travel. And so it works the same for all living organisms. And so getting it local is worth its weight in gold. What I love about that, the continuum there is we can, and we want our audience to learn from both sides. When you broke down bread and grains, the first side, right? The very, machine produced, all that sort of stuff. That sounds awful, but don't hang on that. When you really learn about sourdough, how it's literally raised and how it's created, oh my gosh, that sounds so awesome. I promise you, your nervous systems started to stimulate your saliva glands. Mm-hmm. I promise you, your parasympathetic system turned on when Allie was talking about how sourdough, and she gave us just a quick 101 review of it, by the way. But that's so awesome. And we're drawn to that. We're literally designed by God to go forth into those foods. Those are biblical foods. And okay, real quick, I got to sneak this in.
Self-limiting that way. I want to make that point because, when we're not just store buying, we are putting intention into the process. There is about a 72-hour, process of getting your sourdough reawakened if it was dormant, and then you have to feed it, and then, you make the dough, and then you let it rise, and then you recondition it. So all of that is intentional and purposeful, and in the process also nourishing. And when we buy from our local growers and ranchers, I also want to make the point, not only is there more nutrient density, so there's less of, again, it's that double-edged sword, less of the toxicity, we're getting more nutrient density, more phyto compounds, and more diversity, back to that sunchoke slaw. If we're just buying from the grocery store and we're not using a community-supported agriculture box where we're being challenged with kohlrabi and challenged with abstract produce and eating snout to tail with our meats, that also provides you closer to God food, because again, when you're buying direct in that sense and you're buying whole entity, you're getting that diversity that is much more nourishing.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first couple of community share boxes we got. And I was like, here we go. Wish ChatGPT had existed back then. Be like, hey, chat, upload, turn a recipe loose. Well, actually, I wish I knew your books back then. To be like, all right, let's hammer out this sunchoke slaw and see where we're at with this. Okay.
I'll give you a cheat at that. You got to think of how it grows. So from root to fruit, okay? So if it's a root, longest time in the cook. So when you get your random things, you think about, is this a root or a fruit or a stem or a leaf? And so if it's a root, it's going to hit contact with the pan early on. Onions, garlic, think carrots, think sweet potatoes. They need to be roasted, beets, etc. Then we think of the stems, asparagus, chard stems, celery. Then we think of the fruits, which could be bell peppers, anything botanically that has seed, right? So even our broccoli, florets, cauliflower. And then finally, those greens get braised in with the broth. And so when you don't know, that'll give you an idea of cook time.
There you go.
Vegetables roasted 5 ways. And we give you that philosophy. So now you just look at it and you say, anatomically, what kind of produce is this? Now I know how to deal with it.
Sequencing. I love that is like the word of the day on every single podcast is sequencing. And you just taught us sequencing. That's genius. I love that. So one thing, I'm going to sneak this in. And hey, you know what, Allie? You and Becky can take this and run with this. If Allie and Becky are too busy, which I think it might be, in a good way, to serving, maybe you can't have this idea, but I'm about to change the whole world here. Okay, Allie, you ready for this?
Yeah,
I'm going to over-dramatize this big time for the satire that's coming through it, but maybe it's real. So yesterday, one of our docs, Dr. Steph, is our sourdough purveyor. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, when she started making this incredible sourdough and on her Fridays, and then brought it to, we have a team of like 20 plus, and then we have a practice where we serve like 1,100, 1,200 people a week. So let's just say the demand grew faster than sourdough. Okay. And so when I told Steph yesterday, I was like, hey, and I then interviewed Jordan. I told her I was going to be interviewing you today. And I was like, how can I help you? I'm such a grand scale guy. I was like, Steph, what's the plan to increase and ramp up production? Because I see a problem coming up for you. And she goes, I literally don't have room in my house. So here's the idea, everyone. Somebody take this, run with this. It's the next $1 billion industry, and I will be your investor. Okay. Sourdough shed. You've heard of a she shed. You've heard of a writing shed. You have a chicken coop back there. You just got to build yourself this little, and I don't even know, this goes way beyond my pay grade here, Allie. I'm just throwing the idea out there, but you need a sourdough shed in your backyard. Thousands of husbands are going to murder me dead right now for adding another sourdough related idea to their family. Yes. But somebody just needs to make this prefab sourdough shed. You get online, you order yourself your sourdough shed. It arrives. Yeah, and the starter, it's all coming. No, this is a full package here, okay? Full package. You just click checkout, put it in the box, put it in the cart, buy it, and 72 hours later, it arrives. They assemble it for you, and you're leavening it up by the weekend. Okay, there you go. Something wrong with that. All right. So I love you. We got around third base here. I could talk for a day about this stuff with your brilliance and your just the way you teach it. I said this on the first episode, getting into your content. It's just so doable. And I love that because a lot of times this information is the opposite. It's so overwhelming and we get excited about it, but we actually get anxiety from it because we're like, I want to do that, but how? Yes. Speaking of, one of the final things that I really wanted to get from you on this one is making it fun. My joke that I wrote down is, I have teenagers, Allie, and I don't think we're supposed to use the word hip anymore.
Okay, that's probably true.
It's printed in the book. I'm messing with you, but let's start there.
Maybe it'll come back when Stella's a teen.
I think it will. I'd count on it because everything literally does have a life cycle with words for sure.
It does.
And style and music. So, okay, how do we make it hip for teens? I love this. I have my thoughts on this too. You crushed it in the book with each age group, by the way, as to how to really bring life to it. What do you think with teenagers is it's
special? Absolutely essential that we define their hook. So again, is it the athletics? Is it the mental health? Is it skin health? Is it energy? Is it cognition and academics? And so once we determine a hook, then we can use the information in the book to promote empowering goals and then to help them get involved with the why behind it. I think that healthy is hip because, feeling mediocre is really lame. I mean, that would be my argument. I had my daughter on the podcast right before she started 4th grade, and she said that the way when people bug her about food, and she's had her own amount of, pushback and whatnot. And again, I feel that I'm fashioning her for the real world because she will likely get challenged in other avenues where she's different, which if it's following God's plan is the right way to be. We're not to be in, of this world. And so that's okay. And we're just kind of fashioning and creating that strength, that confidence, that awareness. And so I think if they have buy-in and they see empowerment, that then getting them involved in the kitchen is the next stage of making it a desirable thing. I'm seeing such a renaissance of teens making like beef Wellington,
Yep.
like really cool, proper meals. The bibimbap that we have here, the Korean dish is amazing in here. We have Taste Adventure where we do things like sardine Thai cakes. I mean, the recipes absolutely will stretch your Taste Adventure and adults' palates. And so they are by no means bland and boring. And like the crispy squash wedges with kimchi aioli, for instance, also fantastic and gut supporting. So connecting with them and the appealing aspects, I think, also are on making it creative and fun. And so they know the why, they're connected, and then they're empowered on their differences. They know how to stand firm in truth and or value ethos of the family and be different in this world and to be that light, but to also have excitement in the process. And that comes from making their after school smoothie to getting them into rotation with meal planning with the family. I mean, we have by age, from age 2 through 18, different activities that your child can do, from peeling carrots to cracking and whisking eggs to now at 9, Stella's doing the gas stove top and working with our burners, you know, and that's a privilege and a responsibility that she's worked up for. And she sees that as cool. You know, that's an added thing that she's looked up to as she's grown up in our kitchen. And so when we give the teens these, you know, added responsibilities and they know the why and are empowered by it, they're going to rise to the occasion and they're going to embody it.
Yep. You nailed it. You crushed it. This conversation, you crushed it. This book, you crushed it. I have a few other things that are just from the book that I wanted to talk about today. And they're just, everybody get the book. It's so cool. Like, put down the snacks. You got to read that. That's essential. Having 4 kids, you got to know about that. Kids can cook, making it fun. You got to learn how they wrote about it in there. Making real food tasty. That one, it's on the top left page. I can literally think about it. Like, that was that's huge. Because if you don't hit that, you're not gonna have it. And so I'll just reiterate one more time as a case study of this. Again, I do have the 3 teens and they each have their different hooks. For one of my daughters, she knows that, hey, the way it works at that age with her nervous system, with her sleep schedule, with the demand on school, with her hormones, she knows that if she lets it, her health will feel very roller coastery. She'll have some good days. She'll have some bad days. She'll have, my brain's working. My brain is foggy. And she did not want that. Her hook was, because earlier we tried to get her to eat healthy. And again, my hook is science. I'm a nerd. Well, it turns out I'm not going to go 4 for 4 on Nerd Kids. She cared none about that. But once I stopped, listened, learned her goal was, I just want to have more consistency with my energy and my mood and, you know, my just life, right? Quality of life.
Right.
Now she cooks. She is in the rotation. She makes meals. She's in charge of dinner twice a week. Absolutely crushes it. Takes on bigger challenges. Everything you said is literally coming true. My son, sports. Absolutely. Him and his girlfriend, you know, he's a cross country runner and track. She's a barrel racer. She's a, you know, rock star horse gal. They're obsessed with nutrition from a sports performance component of it. And then my 2 little girls are skincare and hair. I mean, it is what it is, you know, skincare. As a dude, I'm like, that matters that much, huh? You know, and it does. It absolutely does, you know, for them to be involved in their nutrition in that way. So Allie Miller, you know, now officially Dr. as of the intro of this one, you know, PX doctor by, what do they call that? When you get to give honorary a degree. I'm just playing it. We'll print it and ship it to you. Okay. You sent me the book. You sent me the book. I'll send you your honorary PX certification. Okay. Perfect. With Dr. on there. Do you know we have a PX doc in Toronto? Dr. Allie Miller? Maybe that's why.
Really?
Yeah. So she's a rock star. You would love her. Hard charging, mama of 3 rock stars. So what I want to say at the end of this is, everyone, we are going to obviously put every connection to this life-changing book for your kids and family, Naturally Nourished Kids, in the show notes, but we're not going to leave you alone with it. We're going to email it. We're going to Instagram it. We're going to Facebook it. We're going to send you a carrier pigeon with the link to buy, well, pigeons aren't healthy. Chicken will walk up to your door and say, buy this book for your family. Allie, and please share this gratitude with Becky.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you
for
making this. Thank you for coming on here. We will do everything in our power to get this book into the kitchens of our Experience Miracles families, because we know the impact it will have.
Love it. And I think we have kept it very affordably priced at $24.99.
Sure,
but even with that being said, I'll also include a link for your listeners to a free guide. And so that will give you guys some of this content that didn't fit in the book, including a food as medicine immune guide, very important, timely, a week meal
Yeah.
plan with a grocery list. So you can kind of see how it all comes to life, as well as building a balanced smoothie and reading labels, which is really important for those teens when we're looking at like bars and other products, especially those going off to college, so they know how to determine that good, better, best. So I'll put a link for that free bonus guide that you can download from the QR in the book if you've purchased it, or even independent of the book.
I told you this before we started recording. When I got it at the office, I literally turned it around. And I don't know, I haven't written my first book yet, so I literally don't know anything about pricing. I mean, I've read a ton. I looked at the quality of this. I got through it and I saw the flow and the framework. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're literally hitting the nail on the head with this. Like, this is what I want for my family. I turned around and I looked at this little bar with the prices, and I honestly wanted it to say $74.99. Because I that's all I know is like, this has to be, my inclination was like, this has to be 75 to $100, because this is the highest freaking quality book I've ever had my hands on in this way. And I'm not, I would say it differently. We wouldn't have you on the podcast if it wasn't that. We're pretty choosy, I think, in a good way, for our audience about this. So we love you. We think the world of you. We're so grateful for you. And I know you won't, you just never stop doing the work you're doing. Listen to God's calling on your guys' hearts is my favorite thing. You're doing it with such excellence and such joy. And you said the words, vibrant many, many times. You guys have the most vibrancy to your work of anyone I know in the nutritional world. So let's keep working on this together to get millions and millions and millions of families well-adjusted, naturally nourished, and living their best flipping lives. Sound good?
Thank you. Sounds excellent.